Hello, everyone. I am excited to be here today. I am in the middle of writing my manuscript for my new book. It's going to be amazing if I don't say so myself. Um, but I'm just right now reading about, learning about, and writing about something called the Dust Bowl, which is really fascinating. I love these historical stories that really apply to our health and everything else. And in the Dust Bowl, what happened is the government, the United States government, was wanting to establish and homestead the vast states in the Western United States. So they offered a lot of homesteading acts where they would give land to people who would go out and build a house and plow some ground. Well, many people took them up on this offer and they moved to the Midwest states. These states were covered in these thick prairie native grasses that they said sometimes the grasses were 6 feet tall. You could pick wildflowers from the back of a horse, it was said. And to be able to build homes, they had very little wood, so they would cut this soil and make blocks, and that's what they would make sod huts out of. Well, as soon as they would cut the soil, it would expose the soil, or excuse me, as soon as they would cut the sod, it would expose the soil, leaving it very vulnerable to blowing away, to other things. Well, they continued to plow, they continued to grow, and this is how basically the Great Plains turned into what they look like today in the Midwest of the United States. The problem came when the Great Depression came. Prices for the things that they were growing dropped exponentially, so they had to plow more to make ends meet. And then a huge drought happened in the mid 1930s. And with that drought, the land dried up. It was completely parched. And without that thick sod, those native grasses there to hold the dirt in place, it literally started to blow away. And this is what was called the Dust Bowl. And it blew soil as far as New York Harbor. It covered the Statue of Liberty clear from the Midwest, which was just incredible. And it killed people, it killed livestock, it ruined the agricultural situation in the area. It was just crazy what it did. And it was all because they plowed up those native soils. And, I use this analogy in a lot of different ways. I talk about how the food culture that we have today, the medical culture that we have today is often plowing up some of the roots that we have that have really established health for centuries. And a lot of those roots have to do with using native medicines and traditional therapies and understanding how plants help us to be well. All of these kinds of things are so crucial in the care of ourselves and our bodies and our cells. And, I had an interesting experience. I had a practitioner just recently say, everything you're doing is snake oil, which that always interests me when they say that. I'm like, really, everything I'm doing? That's a fascinating opinion that you shared with me just now. He wasn't interested in hearing my opinion back, but that always frustrates me because I think, why are you so adamant that these things that we're sharing are wrong without even looking at what we're talking about? And what I really strongly believe is that there's so much value that can be gained in all kinds of medicine, the kind of medicine that we've been doing for literal centuries, plus the updates and the new things and the innovations that have come to happen in the last 100 years, which have been absolutely amazing. And really, that's the kind of dentistry and medicine that I practice, is the combination of the two. We don't have to pick one over the other. We don't have to say this one's bad to make this one right. They're all right and they're all good. And that's really what I strive to do at Total Care Dental and Wellness. But really, what I teach through Living Well with Dr. Michelle is how do we utilize everything in the world to make us well, to help us be well. So a lot of these questions that you guys throw at me on these lives are dental related, which I'm thrilled to answer, but I always like to bring in things that relate to nutrition and overall health and cell health and things as we're talking about dental health too. So thank you for allowing me to always give you a little update on my life and what I'm learning about, what I'm thinking about at the beginning of these calls. I'm going to jump into some questions here and we'll see what we have to say. My daughter has teeth coming in behind teeth. Do I recommend Vivos or something else to change the spacing? All right, so let's talk a little bit about this. If you have a child whose teeth are coming in behind the other teeth, a lot of times we see this where we'll see teeth back here. And this is usually like a kindergartner who's so bummed because all of the other kids in the class have teeth falling out and they don't have any teeth coming out and they're wishing they would and they don't know why. Well, if there's not enough space in the mouth for all the teeth to come in eventually, a lot of times teeth will start coming in the wrong place. So do we use an appliance like Vivos? So what is Vivos? Vivos is an expansive appliance. It will expand the mouth. Vivos actually isn't indicated in a young child, somebody who has teeth coming in behind other teeth. Vivos is actually better in someone who has all of their permanent teeth already, but there are many other things that we use in a child. So we'll use what are called fixed expanders. There's one called a Schwartz. We can also use something called MyoBrace in really young children, starting as early as like 3 years old. We can start to use MyoBrace, which is a kind of a flexible appliance that they put in their mouth just at nighttime to help direct the growth. Absolutely, if the teeth are coming in behind others, you need to start doing something to change the space in the mouth and make more room for the teeth to come in. What changes would you expect to see following cavitations when it comes to overall health? So it's interesting. Just the word cavitation, let's talk about what that means. Just the word cavitation is actually one I don't use very often. And the reason is it's one of those things that people call snake oil, where they say, I don't believe it. I don't even know what that is. I don't believe that that's a real thing. So I just go to what science says. And it's interesting. They've just changed the name of this. There's a new name. They call it chronic ischemic medullary disease of the jawbone. What does that mean? Oh, sorry, something just fell over there. What does that mean? It means that the jawbone has something that's dead in it, and it's been there for a long time. And what happens if there's something dead in the body? Well, it gets infected. Bugs find it, and that infection spreads everywhere. So that's what I call it, is I call it an area in the jawbone that didn't heal properly. So let's get back to the question. What symptoms would we expect, or what changes would we expect to see following a clean out of those? If we go back into those jawbones and clean out that dead stuff that's leading to infection in the rest of the body, what do we expect to see from that? Well, it's interesting. A lot of it depends on where those areas are. If they're in the wisdom tooth areas, which are the most common area for those to be, if they are there, we will often see changes in the adrenal, basically the endocrine system. So it's the energy system. It's your cortisol, your get up and go, all of those kinds of things are related to the endocrine system. It's also the hormones, sex hormones. So estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, all of these are going to be affected as well. We'll see changes with thyroid, with just energy production in general, with things that involve hormones in the body. A lot of those will show up when we clean out these jawbone areas. Now, other areas may be related to other parts of the body. So look up the tooth meridian chart and it will show that. But we will see resolution of symptoms in a lot of those different areas after cleaning out these dead areas in the bone. I had a root canal removed, bottom second to the back. Is it a good idea to get an implant? So the question is, if you have a tooth removed, should you get an implant placed? And the answer is if you want one, if you want a tooth there. And a lot of times there is value in having the tooth there. The tooth above, it hits against the tooth below. So if the tooth below goes away, the tooth above actually continues to come down, and we will see it falling basically lower and lower and lower, and it starts to interfere with the bite. The teeth on either side of the space also start to tip into the space, causing sometimes gum disease or gum problems, gum recession, those kinds of things. So an implant in the space holds the bone in place, holds the teeth on either side and above in place. And it gives the bone something to do. The longer that a tooth is out, the less bone you're going to have in that spot, because the bone actually resorbs if it has no job to do. So we encourage implant placement for all of those reasons. It gives the bone a job to do, which keeps the bone, preserves the bone. It also allows the teeth to all stay where they belong, gives you better chewing efficiency, and it does activate these what are called meridian systems. So it gives energy to the system that tooth is connected to. So if I had a tooth out, I would get it replaced. Now, I know that that's not always a possibility for everyone. So I always say, there's many options. You can leave the tooth out, but I really prefer to replace it if possible. Okay, if someone has all bad teeth that needs to be replaced, what would you recommend? Get all implants, dentures? What is the recommendation? So if everything needs to be removed in the mouth, first of all, that's always such a sad situation, as a patient and as a practitioner. We hate to see that. But there are options. There are ways to place dental implants to replace every single tooth that was missing. Sometimes we can do 4 to 6 implants on the top and do bridges connecting them, which will replace teeth. That's always preferred if possible, is to replace the teeth with implants. Dentures are an option if you can't do that. Dentures are a disability. It's just straight up what they are. They are a disability. You are not going to be able, because a disability means you're disabled. You're not going to be able to chew the same way you used to. You're not going to be able to taste food the same way you're used to. You're not going to be able to do some of the functions. Even speaking sometimes has changed. Singing, that kind of thing is sometimes changed with a denture. So you're not going to be able to do the things you once used to with your natural teeth. If implants are a possibility, they are going to get you closer to what you had when you had natural teeth. It's always a compromise, but there are ways to get closer to what you had. I'm getting my root canal removed next week with a biologic dentist. Are there any supplements or what you should take before or after? Absolutely. So when you get a tooth removed, I want you to think about what needs to happen next. First of all, the immune system needs to be strong to be able to clean up everything and take care of if there's any infection in the area. But number two, which is even more important, the body needs to be able to grow bone. And I really talk about this all the time. You can't build something unless you have materials to do it. So if you want to build bone, you need the materials the bone are made of. Well, what are those materials? Largely minerals. So you absolutely need minerals. That's the key component number one. The second key component is, what does it take to get a mineral into the cell? Into what? The cell is the thing that needs to actually build the bone. Well, how do you get the mineral into the cell? You get it into the cell with vitamin D3 and vitamin K2. They are kind of the things I like to think of them as. D3 grabs the mineral and K2 opens the door to the cell and lets the mineral in. So you have to have vitamin D3 and K2 and minerals that grow bone. So on my website, if you want to look there, it's called the Remineralization Kit. It has what we call tooth and bone formula and vitamin D3, K2 in the right amount to be able to enable you to grow bone. That's the big one. The other one that really helps is omega-3s. So if you take omega-3s, it really helps with just overall body being able to regenerate. There's a lot of things that fat is very useful for. So that's another good supplement to take post the tooth removal. Is it normal for a tooth to be sensitive after a filling? Sometimes. When I was doing fillings regularly, I would tell people it's going to be bothersome for about 10 days. Why 10 days? Because usually by about 10 days, the pain or the bother was going to be gone. Now a tooth's been worked on. You've messed with it. There was a reason you worked on it to begin with. Either a cavity or filling was failing. I mean, the tooth wasn't in great shape before it started. Then we mess with it. We drill on it. We, do all these kinds of things. So it can be sensitive. And I tell people, like I said, about 10 days to expect it to be sensitive. If it's sensitive past that, the things you're going to look for is it sensitive to chew on? If so, it may be that filling is actually a little too tall. Is it sensitive to hot or cold? If so, go get my remineralization tooth powder. That's going to help or the sensitive tooth powder. That's going to help to fill up the tubes that were kind of exposed during that filling. If it just hurts by itself or hurts all the time, that's not what you want. That indicates that something's going on with a nerve in the tooth. You need to go have that looked at. The dentist is saying my top jaw is too small for my bottom jaw. Would this be a time to use Vivos? So we talked about this just a minute ago, but yes. So Vivos is an appliance that does expand the top jaw. It is great for that. And if the top jaw doesn't fit inside of oftentimes what happens is the bottom jaw has to constrict and push back into where we're trying to breathe to be able to fit inside of the top jaw. So if you can make the top jaw bigger, the bottom jaw can come forward and it can come out of the airway. So it's a great appliance to use. There is one caveat with Vivos that you really need to understand. The best results come when you're wearing it 16 hours a day. And I used to tell people 8 to 10 hours is plenty. And I've learned that's not true. You need to be wearing it 16 hours a day. Vivos is difficult to talk in. So if you have a job or a lifestyle that requires you to talk quite a bit, like I could never do Vivos because I talk too much. If you can't wear it 16 hours a day, you probably aren't going to get as much effect out of it as you really hoped for. So then we recommend something called Candid, which is like Invisalign, but it's a little different. It actually engages the bone in the jaw, and we can move teeth oftentimes with Candid in patients that can't wear a Vivos appliance. So there are two options there. I have lots of health issues. I have 9 amalgams for 40 plus years. Should they come out? All right. So what is an amalgam? An amalgam is a silver filling. You look in there, you go, oh, I got a silver filling. Well, did you know that filling is 50% mercury, 50% other stuff? Silver, copper, palladium, like a whole bunch of other metals, 50% mercury, right? Did you just hear that? Research shows, I can tell you these things safely. Research shows that mercury is released from those fillings 24/7. Mercury is the most non-radioactive neurotoxic element on the planet. Mercury does affect your nerves, your gut, the way basically your system is energized, the way everything works in your memory. These are all things I can tell you. Is it worth it to keep the fillings in your mouth? In my mind, no. In my opinion, absolutely not. It's worth it to get them removed. But caveat here also, Don't get a mercury filling out if you're not going to do it safely. Because as soon as you start drilling on that filling, you're going to be releasing mercury vapor. You're going to be getting chunks into your mouth. And if you are just releasing that all, you're going to get a massive dose of mercury. It's better just to get a slow dose of poison than a massive dose of poison, all at the same time. So you need to go to a dentist who's smart trained, who can remove these fillings safely. They're going to have a giant vacuum. They're going to have dams in the mouth. They're going to have a big vacuum right up next to the tooth. You're going to be covered, your face, your body's going to be covered. They're going to have crazy looking masks on. All of this to protect everybody in the room from the mercury that's been released from those fillings. So in your case, would I get them out? Absolutely, I would get them out, but not unless you can find someone to do it safely. My 14-year-old is showing 10 cavities between the teeth. The dentist says some are small that don't need filling yet. She wants to wait and see. The other needs a filling. What should I ask my dentist? Basically, if this is true, 14-year-old is showing 10 cavities between the teeth. You need to get on the remineralization protocol yesterday. So go check it out. It's on the website. It's going to be the tooth and bone formula, the vitamin D and K, and the remineralizing tooth powder. That has to be part of this 14-year-old's life. Otherwise, those cavities are going to progress. The other thing I would recommend doing is go take the gut health or the baking soda test to check gut health. Because if there's 10 cavities, something's up. Something's up. Usually in a 14-year-old, there's been a hormone change. And when hormones change, really, actually, I've just come to understand this a lot better in just the last couple of weeks. If you think about it in a 14-year-old, what's a 14-year-old doing? They're growing, massively growing. So they require a lot of nutrients, a lot of minerals. Well, if that 14-year-old body doesn't have enough nutrients in it, what's going to happen is the body will pull them from the teeth and it'll show up as cavities. So literally there's a fluid flow in the teeth and it reverses pulling minerals out of the tooth and into the body because the body needs it to grow. So in the 14-year-old, you have to make sure that they're getting enough nutrients. That's where the remineralization kit's going to come in. That's the tooth and bone formula. That's the vitamin D and K. That's the tooth powder on the outside. Okay. But you also need to make sure that they're able to absorb the things that they're eating. So go take the baking soda test, have them take the baking soda test. If they don't burp, you know that their gut is not working properly. So you need to be working on gut health as well to make sure that they're absorbing enough. But the remineralization supplements should help to re-mineralize the teeth so that they don't need those cavities filled. What is the best solution for a cavity on a front tooth? Where will a filling affect its appearance? Well, on a front tooth, you need to get the cavity fixed. First of all, a lot of this depends on the skill of the dentist, because we can make a filling completely invisible on a front tooth, completely invisible. There's technology to make that happen now. Does it always happen? No, because it actually is kind of a hard thing to do, to find the right material, to match it exactly, to polish it the same kind of smoothness, the shininess, of a front tooth. It can be a little difficult. So depending on the size, you may instead want to get a veneer on the tooth, which is a porcelain covering, and they just match that to the other teeth. But then that also depends on the skill of the dentist. So you need to find somebody that is good at making something look good on front teeth. This may be a reason to go to a website and see, do they have pictures of front teeth and how do they look on there? If you replace the tooth, isn't there a possibility of infection above the implant, just as there would be with the root canal? All right, this is a great question. It's the difference between a tooth and an implant. Let's talk about it. The reason that the root canal often gets new infection is because there's dead tissue still in the tooth. The tooth has nerve tissue, blood vessel tissue that go through the main canal, but also through these little tubes all the way throughout the tooth. The main canal is cleaned and filled in a root canal, but not the little tiny tubes. So there's dead tissue still there. The dead tissue is what attracts the bacteria. Now let's take an implant. What is an implant? It's a solid block of material, whether it's titanium or zirconia. It's a solid block of material. There's no tissue in that whatsoever. So there's no dead tissue. There can't be dead tissue. So there's nothing in the implant that will attract bacteria. Does that make sense? So if an implant gets infected, where it comes from is not internally, not inside the implant itself. So we're not going to see it above the end of the implant. We're going to see it at the gum side of the implant, because sometimes the implant doesn't integrate like it should. Lots of different research and studies about why, lots of different reasons. But if it doesn't integrate, meaning if the bone doesn't grow to it, then the implant surface itself is unprotected. Bugs crawl down on it. They infect the gums around it. It's difficult to clean, and sometimes you'll lose bone that way. Completely different situation. So no, you will not get infection above an implant the same way you get a root canal infection, because the root canal infection is due to dead tissue. The implant has no dead tissue in it. Are there gum or mints that I recommend? So the best ones for tooth health contain xylitol. I know there's some controversy about xylitol, but they are very, very good for tooth health. So I particularly actually like my breath spray the very best because not only does it has xylitol in it, which prevents cavities, but it also has essential oils. It also has things that are going to improve your gum health, and it has hydroxyapatite. So it's going to basically rebuild your teeth while you're freshening your breath. So that's why I love it. For many reasons, I just carry that around with me in my bag, in my car, wherever, because it'll freshen your breath on the go. I had tooth number 14 extracted because of an older root canal. The tooth that it would touch in the bottom jaw needs a root canal or to be extracted. I'm hoping to avoid extraction. What other options do I have? Okay, so complex situation here. Already had a tooth in the top taken out. The one that it chews with on the bottom is either needing a root canal or to be removed as well. Don't want to remove it. What do? You've already said the only two options. If the tooth is dead. If the tooth is dead or infected, then the only two options are root canal or removal. If the tooth is still alive, we actually use ozone and keep that tooth alive and functioning. So that's the key. Is the tooth still alive? Can you still feel hot or cold on it? That kind of thing. If it's still alive, it's savable. Make sure to see if it's alive or not. I'm going to jump to these comments for a second. I have to remember where I'm at here. Okay. I'm freaking out because one of my front lower teeth is in terrible pain, and I'm assuming I need a root canal. But I've read up on it, and I don't want to pull a front tooth. I get it. I get it 100%. However, here's the deal. You really, if it is dead, that's the key. Is it dead? If the tooth is dead, there's only two options: a root canal or removing the tooth. We can replace a front tooth. In fact, a lower front tooth is actually, there's a lot of great options to replace that lower front tooth. We can do a dental implant, or we can do what's called a winged bridge, which is very conservative. It doesn't harm the other teeth next to it. There's a lot of ways to replace that tooth. If you were me, if I had an infected front tooth, it would be out tomorrow. Not even thinking about it, because there's a lot of ways to replace that tooth that don't harm you, where a root canal or infected tooth do. If you have tooth decay and take out the tooth, do you have to have a root filling? So if you have tooth decay, if you just have a cavity in the tooth, you can just do a regular filling. All that means is you're going to take out the decayed portion of the cavity and put a filling in, plug it up. If that cavity goes all the way to the nerve and the nerve dies, then you may need a root filling, which is in essence a root canal. That's what we call a root canal. So it depends on the depth of the cavity. I've had depression since 2015. It started after taking the wisdom teeth out. Can it be related? Absolutely, it can be related. Will I ever tell you that it caused it? Never. But do I see it all the time? Yes. So something to look into for sure. Is the ozone treatment a one-time thing or an ongoing situation? Good question. I'm guessing that's in reference to ozone under an old cavity. Well, that's a one-time thing. If it's a cavity, we take out the cavity, we use ozone to kill the rest of the bugs growing in there. If that's what we do, then it's a one-time deal. We fill over top of it and we're good to go. We use ozone on other things as well, but in that situation, that's a one-time thing. Okay. I've been getting little mild shots of pain in the upper left. I thought it was jaw, but now I think it might be the number 15 root area. So upper left, number 15 is the very back molar, not the wisdom tooth, but the one in front of it. Seem to come on after getting something stuck up there. So you need to go have a dentist look at this. It may be that there is something stuck. It may be that you have some bone loss. Mild shots of pain are often bone related. So I would check and see if you have gum disease. What might be contributing to that? And could it be a gum issue? That's where I would start. How much K2 is needed for 1,000 IUs in order to remineralize the teeth? Well, 1,000 IUs isn't enough. That's a vitamin D3 measurement. That's really not enough to remineralize teeth. You need to be more in the 5,000 or even 10,000 range to remineralize. 1,000 is great for maintenance. We're not talking maintenance when we're talking remineralizing. But typically 10,000 IUs equates to about 1,200 micrograms of K2. So if you say 1,000, you're going to say about 100 micrograms of K2, somewhere in that range. Why are so many dental data sheets incomplete in terms of mutation studies? That goes for the ingredients that make up some composites available. How do we know that this is safe? So this is a challenge. I actually had a patient who had a real sensitivity to titanium. We ended up removing 2 titanium implants in her mouth, and she felt amazing, felt great, felt better than she'd felt in a long time. She needed just a small little filling. So we decided to do a composite restoration, a composite filling on her. said, no, we looked through the data sheets, we looked through everything. There was nothing in it that was problematic. Did the filling, she got desperately ill again. Didn't know why, didn't know what we were going to do. And her husband started researching dental materials. And what he found is that there is something called titanium dioxide in these composites. That's the thing that gives them the white color that makes them look like a tooth. And so we looked everywhere for a composite that didn't have it. We couldn't find it unless it was a completely see-through composite, because the white's what make, like I said, it's what makes it white. The titanium dioxide makes it white. So there are things that are not included on those material data sheets. Absolutely. And you say, you know what? How do we know this is safe? Well, my contention is, what is the option? What is your alternative? If your alternative is a mercury filling, I guarantee you a composite is more healthy than that. If your alternative is removing a tooth, well, then you're going to need to replace it with something. You most likely, so it's, again, you just have to weigh this. And I talk about this actually in my book. I was just writing about this obsession with purity. And we can get to this place where it's like, no, that's so bad. That's so bad. That's so bad. That's so bad. Well, then what? There has to be some recognition of there are risks with everything. And guess what? Our bodies are phenomenally amazing at dealing with stuff. We wouldn't live if they weren't. They're phenomenal at dealing with stuff. So we have to give them some credit and the ability to deal with some stuff. We work hard to get the best stuff, but sometimes there are some risks and, pros and cons of a lot of things. So we take the thing that has the least cons and the most pros. Sometimes that's as good as we can do. And it's going to have to be okay. And our bodies will figure out how to deal with it most of the time. My daughter has a premolar that delayed coming up. It was completely sideways when impacted. I decided to wait, and it finally has come up. She's 13, a little angled and tilted back. So basically a tooth was struggling to come in. Again, probably a little bit of a space issue when she grew a little bit at 13. Now there's a little bit more space for that tooth to come in. I have a dental assistant and we remove amalgam all the time. How do I protect myself? Oh my gosh. I want to talk to you. I had so many infertility issues. I've never been able to get pregnant in how many years I've been married? A lot, over 30 years of marriage. And the problem is that nobody knows exactly what it's from, right? I went through so many treatments. I went through so many everything, so much money, so much heartache, so much everything. And I've since learned the mercury is hugely implicated in fertility issues. That's just a starting point. Mercury is what made me sick, right? So what do? Well, if you're a dental assistant and your doctor is not on board for doing this safely, you can do something very simple. Go on, it's called IAOMT.org, and they have a shop on there where you can buy products to do safe mercury removal. Go and get yourself a mercury filtration mask. So it's going to be able to, so basically when you're breathing, it's going to filter what's coming in through your mouth and nose. I typically wear a double. So I wear a regular mask and then the mercury filtration mask over it. That's the best thing you're going to be able to do to keep yourself safe while if your dentist is not practicing safe processes. And unfortunately, this is the norm, not the exception. And I wish it were the exception, but it's not. So what you're going to do is go and get mercury filtration mask for yourself. Is there a way to help? Sorry, I've got to be right off at noon today. So I've got 2 minutes. So I am hurrying fast just to make sure I have. Yep. So I am hurrying fast to get two last questions here before I jump off. Is there a way to help with receding gum lines? So the key with receding gum lines is to figure out exactly what's causing it. Is it gum disease? That can be detected at a dental office. They do a gum exam and determine, is this disease process? Is this infection that's actually leading to the bone and the gum receding? Is that number one, the question? Number two, is it the way your teeth come together? Oftentimes I'll see teeth that are very tipped in like this, especially in the bottom. We talked about how if the top jaw is small, then the bottom teeth have to tip to fit inside. If your top jaw is small, the bottom teeth have to tip. They hit at an angle. And when they hit at an angle, what it does is it flexes the tooth like this. Well, the gum line's right here at that flexure point. So it moves down out of the point of flexure in order to be able to get out of that motion and to be stable. So we look at bite and say, is this the reason that your gums are receding? You have to figure out that first. Then you fix that problem. Sometimes we have to graft and add gum back. Sometimes we just want to strengthen. And what do we do with that? We use tooth and bone formula again and my mouthwash again, because all of those have things that are going to strengthen that gum, but figure out what's causing it. All right. Last one. Is there anything I should be taking considering I've been breastfeeding for almost 7 years straight? I'm starting to feel a few cavities coming on. Absolutely. Tooth and bone formula, vitamin D and K. Every nursing mama, pregnant mama should be on this through their entire pregnancy. You are growing a human. You are growing a human. You have to have the building blocks necessary to grow that human. If not, your body will take them from you, guaranteed. So, remineralizing kit, 100% pregnancy, nursing, all the time. Thank you guys. Always love being on here. Keep sending your questions. We'll keep getting to them. Have a great day. It's sunny.